All right, sorry, I had to fix my microphone. Things were a little crazy here. How you doing? It's Jeremy Kirkland. You're listening to Blammo. It's a new week. It's a good old Monday, and we're just trudging onward. We all doing all right? We doing okay? It's been a heavy week, but I've been listening to a lot of music. What's new, right? I listen to music a lot. I love music. In fact, lately, I've been more interested in having musicians on the show than some fashion folks, solely because, I don't know, I feel like it's so important to me right now. I mean, there's a lot of great brands and doing stuff, but it's just musicians. It's everything for me. That being said, do any of you listen to instrumental music? By the way, and I even wrote this out in my intro. Like, is it rude that I use the term instrumental music? You know, some people are like, well, it's just music. It's just not vocals on it. It's like, okay, fair. But whatever you want to call it, it's all music. And I have been listening to Phil Cook's Appalachia Borealis. I listen to it all the time. I think I had to pull up my play count here, and it's up there. I will say it's been over 48 times I've listened to this album. That is 100% true. I'm outing myself. I did have an advance, so I got to listen to it quite a bit before it came out. But for a while, I was listening to it once a day. That's crazy. But I put it on late in the evening. You know, other times I put it on. I'm making my coffee in the morning. I put some tunes on in the morning, and I love this album because it's music that you forget is on, but it's also music you can really like lock into. It's so good. It's called Appalachia Borealis, or Appalachia, however you want to say it. But it was produced by Phil's close friend and frequent collaborator Justin Vernon, aka Mr. Bon Iver. But the album it's just so good. It's a good headphone album. It's incredible, and he's on the pod this week. Who would have thought? Phil Cook. He's here. I got to sit down with Phil for an episode not too long ago, but we had to edit it up, chop it up. We talked about gospel music. We talk about parenting. We talk about his friendship with the GOAT, Bruce Hornsby. It's all in there. We talk nature, talk leaning over on the piano. You even hear him tickle some ivories a little bit on the pod. It's all in there. Let's go. It's Phil Cook on Blammo. Here we go. How are things going with you?
Man, they're going well. Yeah, everything's yeah. Things are going well. It's good to be putting a record back out in the world. This feels like it's been a while since I've been on tour, been on the road. It's been like 5 years, and it just feels good to be back in the cycle, man, for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, the record drops tomorrow, but by the time this is out, it will have been out for a little bit. Are you like tired of the record yet?
Honestly, I'm not, and it's for this reason. It's basically like music is a very and the piano especially. It's a processing mode for me. I really go to a place when I go there and set the record up in the recording session with the right people and the right ambiance, the right like headspace, mind space, heart space to really kind of go there. And so, when I hear the record, it brings me to that place, that I recorded the record in. And I'm really proud of that place. So, I mean, I can't speak for a year from now.
After you've been playing it nonstop?
After I've been playing it nonstop. But, I think the live show gives me a chance every night to make it my own every night and, respond to the room and respond to my inner voice and what's coming through. I think that's just going to all let it be fresh. And that's what I'm looking forward to as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've always been curious about, especially with music like yours. I mean, because we've come a long way from like Megaphone and everything else. Like this is very it's very like assuring. I don't really know if that's the best word to use, but like I listened to it and like I wanted to pull this up because like I've heard the entire record on a number of times in my car, in our home stereo, on my NS10s, which, are really flat speakers anyway, and in headphones. And headphones is the sweet spot for me. And folks who listen to this pod a lot, I always advocate getting like a really killer DAC and, just listening to stuff on headphones. But there's some heavy stuff in there.
Yeah.
But like I listened to Dawn Birds and I had it on, and my daughter was upstairs and we had it on the stereo upstairs, and she's drawing, and usually like she kind of doesn't care or pay attention to the stuff I'm listening to. A lot of it's like the Beatles or Dylan or whatever. And she's like, Dad, who is this? And I was like, oh, this is a man named Phil Cook. And she's like, it sounds like he's really happy, but then it sounds like he's sad. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, my fucking 7-year-old is blowing my mind right now. So I told her I was going to talk to you. She's like, ask him if he's happy or if he's sad.
Yeah. What's your daughter's name?
Harriet.
Harriet, I really thank you, Harriet, for being so perceptive and being so open and letting that music hit you the way it did, but the answer, of course, is going to be both, because the older you get and the more life you live, the more feelings kind of mix together. You're just holding two things at the same time, so I think being the age I am now and all the things I've, succeeded at and all the things that I've failed at and people I've lost and friends I've gained, it's just like life is very deep. And so what that means is it has to be it's like the movie Inside Out, It's just like by the end of the movie,
we just rewatched that,
and by the end of the movie, it's like the takeaway that movie hit me real hard, like way
Do you have
after.
Kids?
I have a 13-year-old and an 8-year-old, so I have a similar age kid to you, 2 boys. But yeah, I mean, just like I think that's a part of just part of it is just to be happy and sad at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really beautiful. And I know that there was stuff going on when you were making this record, and I'm curious too, where it's like, I was a musician for a long time, more or less like kind of a failed musician. And now I'm like a dude who plays Jim Croce songs on guitar for his kids. Yeah. But there's certain stuff in there that, I'm curious, especially where it's like you can, with an instrument like the piano, you can hear your entire body playing, like you can hear how hard you're striking.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of curious, like how does that affect you when these are songs that like you're going to be performing often? Like is there a certain mindset that you ever feel like you have to go into to perform that? Or are there some songs where it's like, no, man, I can't play it tonight because it's about this and I can't go there because now I'm here?
Well, this show is going to be an exercise for me. It's going to be a big trust fall. This tour is going to be really a reintroduction of myself to everybody as the person that I always was all along. And to do that, I need to break myself wide open for everybody. And that's part of the thing I want to do with the show is bring my presence full to bear. And whatever authenticity people glean from that and that people like receive from that, like and reflect to their own experience and their own life is going to be their takeaway from the show. But but in order to do that, I mean, I really have to go there, and I wrote this music so that it's a container for me to be able to do that. Whereas before I played in all these rock bands and I would be a side person and I'd be like, oh, I got to do this song again tonight, but it's not my set. It's not my show. Right. It's not my, it's not, so, but you just bring yourself there in a different way. It's a contortion. And when we're toured with my own rock band, it was like the drag of being on the road. It just wears you down after a while. So, some songs you really got to muster a lot for. But I've designed everything now in my life so that like I'm touring in a car by myself. My load-in is like a Pelican with a projector and a few just little things and some talismans that I keep around the piano. And I meet a new piano every night. And every night will be different. But I have a mission in my heart, like in my soul, to just to pour myself into the music that I wrote, because I did make it so that I can go there every night. And that's what I love about doing this new phase of my life, is that I can do that now. I've designed it that way. I can really do that and go there, and I believe in it. So that's really where it comes down to.
What changed that made you go from stuff like Steam Powered Blues to this?
My first 40 years, I was I was a kid that showed a lot of musical aptitude in a very small town in the upper Midwest. So
Where?
in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So
Okay, right.
yeah. So I was a drifty kid. And I was often like preoccupied, and I was really sensitive. So I was taking the world in a lot. But part of being externally motivated is, having people really encourage this thing that you have a gift for, and they start to identify that with you. And then you, as a sensitive kid, I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I believed it and I was there, but it set the stage for me to really, make music this outward, the feedback loop of getting all of that, that conversation between the crowd back and forth, and hone that down. And it kind of coincides with my mom was a county social worker and my dad was a hospice nurse, and I'm really built for people. And I saw them, they were big community people. They had a wide group of friends, and our family is really close. So I love people. So combining music and people was the first 40 years of my life. But I did begin to chase that more, that external validation and people pleasing, and really trying to make everybody happy all the time. And I love what I did, so Steam Power Blues and that whole People Are My Drug record was I wanted to share this community that I had found and become deep friends with everybody, and just share the spontaneity of making a record in 1 week and having it be mostly live and
right.
off the cuff, first or second take, everything. Every single thing we did was first, second take. Vocals, every band cut, every choir cut, all that stuff was just from the gut. This is who we are. And these are the people I surround myself with. I'm so proud of that. But when the pandemic hit, I had to come home from the road, and this whole source of external validation came away. And then I was back to being in a small house with 2 small children, and in a marriage that had some pretty big pieces to figure out in it, from being gone all the time and not having quite enough skills built up to really make it past, go all the way to the finish line like my parents did. So divorce is devastating. And luckily I found the piano in the middle of the pandemic and came back to piano, my first home instrument that I started when I was 3. It really got me through the pandemic. And then ultimately, in the aftermath of divorce, it's really hard on everybody. It's hardest on your kids, all the adjustments they have to make, and their world shatters, and then both parents are trying to navigate a new world without a partner that they've known their whole adulthood. However functional or dysfunctional it's become, you're on your own in a big sense. You're starting over. So I had to take all these broken pieces and find the ones that felt the most true, that I knew were sanctuaries. I call them sanctuaries. And the first one was piano. My family and my old friends came back into the fold in a big way. And I poured myself all that uncomfortability, in therapy, and a lot of failing and a lot of just picking up the pieces. And it's really humbling. But that to me was where I had to now fill in the gaps that I had not had all along, in my first half of my life. I had to sit with my sadness and with my uncomfortabilities in a way that I never had given myself a chance to, because it just wasn't me. And so and you can't really make it all the way through life like that by pushing some stuff down because it's bad, and you don't want to feel those things. You don't want to be an angry person, because people see me as this gregarious person, and I wanted to make sure I give that to everybody, but it wasn't sustainable. So the sanctuary of the piano was huge, my family and friends. And then during the pandemic, my kids and I got in this habit of going out and finding these beautiful network of trails and nature preserves all around Durham where we live. So we'd get out in the woods every day, and that became sacred to me. So really it was just I have these things. So I get in the woods every day, play piano every day, and navigate life. But need to find a way to slow everything down and see what I really have, and find a new way to live comfortably in my body. And so it all built from there. That's really what happened.
Did you grow up in the church?
We belong to a Presbyterian church. And the best thing from that experience for me was it was a really nice community. There was a Wednesday night dinner, and all these volunteers would cook. My mom would cook this famous mac and cheese once every 6 weeks. and it was a baked mac and cheese. And
Hell yeah.
those were the fullest nights. The most people would come when my mom did her mac and cheese. And so there was a great community of people there and good adults, just really like watched out for me and my brother. And then there was this piano, because I was a piano player and I was young at it. Me and my dad and another fellow at church got to go to Minneapolis to the Schmidt Music warehouse in Minneapolis, where they really housed this massive floor full of grand pianos. And we got to select the piano that would live in the sanctuary. So I got to help pick that piano, and we found this beautiful Kawai piano. And then for me, the best part about church was that piano in the sanctuary. And anytime I could find to be in there alone and be and spend time with that piano was like really, really special.
Okay, hey, I got a little secret. Feel free to even turn the volume up for a second. I'm into loafers, folks. I like a little slippy slide for my dress shoes. I'll throw on a pair when I want to dress up some denim or when I want to dress down a suit. But my go-to loafers are from Grant Stone. Family-owned and operated, Grant Stone are usually known for their incredible Goodyear welted boots. The diesel boot is a personal favorite of mine, but they're Goodyear welted because they're easy to replace and they make footwear that will last a lifetime. But for me, my Grant Stones are my loafies. This spring, I've been wearing their classic horsebit loafers. And while yes, Grant Stone is an e-com company, Grant Stone's services are the best I've ever had. It was easy. You can email their staff. You can let them know what your size is because you're like, I don't know, am I this size? Am I this size? Reach out to them and they will get you sorted in whatever you're looking for. Plus, they make their footwear in a variety of widths, so you can even get your big hobbit feet fitting nice and comfy. So grab a pair and enjoy the fact that you bought shoes that will last for ages with their Goodyear welted construction, incredible leathers, and a footbed that molds nice to your foot. You can even repair these shoes years later when you need them, so you can wear big fits for years. Grant Stone has it all. So visit grantstoneshoes.com to learn more. That's grantstoneshoes.com. Oh, what's my next pair? Espresso suede penny loafers from Grant Stone. It's interesting that the reason why I asked about church is because it felt like some of the stuff you were saying is a little bit similar to my own upbringing. Like I grew up, my dad was a pastor. He passed last year and I grew up very, I would say like now people would say like the phrase like over-churched. Yeah. Where the primary form of community that I had, which by the way was excellent, was in the church. Yeah. And there was a thing that happened in it where whatever type of church you're going into, there's so much joy and community that exists in some of these places. Also pain, but I won't get into that at the moment. But like you see a lot of people encouraging each other. And as a younger person, I was playing music, I was playing guitar, I was singing, I was playing like mandolin and, whatever. And I had all these people that came up to me, these adults, these elders, whatever you want to say. And they were like, you're really good. You need to do this. And at the time, I'm 13, 14. And I don't know, I don't want to project this onto you, but I felt like so much of my career felt like it was decided for me at this younger age based on all of this like praise and exhortation and joy that I was receiving with me just trying to be a young artist. Yeah. I loved like punk rock and I was into, like Rancid and, the Smiths and then like REM and whatever it was. And that I just wanted to be a rock star, And so these people came alongside me. They were like, oh, Jeremy, like you have a gift. Like like the Lord has given you this gift. You need to play music. And a part of me was like, well, what the like, I don't even know if I just feel good when I do this. Yeah. But like, I actually want to be a skateboarder, and again, like, I'm 13, so like you're so fragile. And, it's why I moved to New York when I was 18, solely to try to be a musician. This was like 2004. And, I got super into the music scene there. I lived there up until the pandemic when my wife and I moved back here to take care of my dad. And at some point, and I'm curious if you wrestled with this, as I got a lot older and I was trying to kind of go and project my art out into the world. And I thought I was going to get the story that all these other people that I really looked up to and admired as a young 13-year-old told me I was going to get, and I didn't get it. And I was like, like, this is so messed up. I blame, and for a while, and I've been in lots of therapy too, I blamed them for my own failures in the sense that I was like, well, you guys told me to go be a musician. You told me I had some gift. You told me I had some thing. And I'm out here and I'm playing shows and we're playing Bowery Ballroom or whatever, but it's not popping. And whose fault is it? And I kind of had this moment where I was just mad and angry and just wanted to blame everyone. And I'm on stage at Bowery Ballroom.
Yeah. You're missing the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know, this was your music career. This wasn't my music career. And here I am. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, and it's like you got dirty projectors out in the audience or whatever is going on. And you're just like, this sucks. And from hearing some of the stuff that you said, I'm curious how much your own like faith and community or whatever it was pushed you into this musical journey that then you're like, you know what? Like, I just want to play piano.
Yeah. You know, it's really a great question, Jeremy. You know, my journey was more on that end. Like that definitely affected me. It definitely propelled me and definitely stuck with me for a long time. And I had questions about who I was doing it for at certain points along the time. But, you know, when I was in high school, you know, through going to a jazz camp, I ultimately ended up joining my first rock band with Justin Vernon and 6 other people. And we made this band and we were so isolated where we were in northern Wisconsin that we kind of didn't know any better. We had a really, it was a really innocent way of approaching music. Like we really were trying to do like the most inner expression of our hearts, you know, and really get in there. But we ended up really finding a really deep community. Those are still my best friends of all time. That's that first high school band that I formed. I hung out with half of them last night. They're in town, and it's my oldest friends, and that was enough of a like lamp onto my adolescent path in the unknown of that I was able to actually kind of navigate that with the collective of people, and then ultimately moved to North Carolina with, you know, Justin and my brother and Joe Westerland. We all moved together. We really kept that bubble and that place really safe for us to continue to express ourselves and figure out what's going on. And I felt like it transferred from the church to this other group that I really believed in. And along the way, all those things have broken open after time and had to be rebuilt. You know, it's happened many times in my life. You know, divorce is the biggest one. But, you know, when DeArmond Edison broke up the band I had with those 3 a year after we moved to North Carolina, that was a massive readjustment. But in putting the pieces back together, we formed Megaphone. We learned how to make records, how to write songs, how to tour, how to travel, how to compromise, how to communicate, how to produce, all of these things, how to perform in a real way without Justin. That was really important for us to do that on our own in his shadow of him blowing up. In, you know, when he first came out
with Bon Iver and all that stuff.
That was really hard territory to navigate because we were obviously in this like totally having different experiences. Like he was launching up into playing. He went from a van to a bus like that. He went from clubs to theaters like that, you know, and we were playing to like 6 people in Buffalo, you know what I mean? Including the sound guy and his girlfriend. And every night, but it was really harrowing. But the thing about it that was important was that we understood every single step of our journey along the way. I know what it is to sit in the back left bucket seat of a minivan. I know what those load-ins and load-outs, I've done every single one of them myself. I know what it felt like to get our first hotel room a year and a half into touring. It was a shitty Motel 8 north of Nashville, Tennessee. I remember the hotel. I remember every step of the way. That was the gift I was afforded so that like I got a chance to then witness everything else happening around. So everything part of the journey had to happen the way it did. And when things broke open, I had to navigate the anger of those. But time and perspective gave me a chance to understand what I got instead was this real truth. And I got to live in this truth that I knew that I could really speak from at my age now when I mentor a younger artist and I'm with them and I see where they're at in the journey. I've seen so much now, you know, I've seen so much and I've been there and I can really say I've been there. So, I mean, that's really where I come from. But like the church side of things, I had a healing moment, a healing moment for me was, I was a kid. As a kid, I was eighth grade. I was really into piano. I was really into.
Hell yeah. Bruce, baby.
And I met him in eighth grade. I met him the summer after eighth grade, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. And he was just like, work your ass off, practice your ass off. It's worth it, my man. Go, and I was like, okay, sir. I went. Yeah. And I was, and at the time I was consuming my dad's record collection. He had Motown and soul and the Beatles and Frank Zappa, and he had, Van Morrison, and he had like Philip Glass.
Quite eclectic, to be honest.
Really,
yeah.
My dad's ahead. And my dad also plays piano and by ear, and he's a Renaissance man. So I felt access all the time to just have fun with it. And I just learned from records over and over again. I dove in so hard. And, I found the staple singers. I found famously Oh Happy Day and Sister Act 2. I was like, what is this song? You know what I mean? Like, this is unreal. But think about it. I was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there was sadly, just by proxy, not a lot of Black gospel happening in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. None, in fact, and so that's the vessel it had to come into me through. You never know where it's going to come from, but it makes its way through the cultural fabric. And then Sister Act somehow landed in my living room one day that I was watching it. And that started this whole journey where I joined the choir. I was eighth grade, and the next youngest person in the church choir was 46 or 47.
So you joined the church choir in eighth grade?
Yeah, I was 14. I was the youngest person. I was a bass, and I got a lot of gall because I had a lot of feelings about I actually taught the choir to clap on. We did some spirituals, which is always funny in Wisconsin, to have a group of just old Presbyterians just trying to figure out how to hold on to something that's flying away from them. And so I would get up in front of the crowd and be like, no, we got to clap on 2 and 4. That's how, I had to change that. And then I would just be like, let's slide into that note. And the choir director was like, this kid's got some stones, man, but I cared so much about it, and I longed for the music so much, and I wished that we could sing with more power. And I just tried to, and it was probably amusing, but because I was young and cared so much, I think people just were like, oh, okay, kid,
Yeah.
And so fast forward, all these years later, I've had way more deep dive into Black gospel music, and have been a deep fan and a record. That's all I collect for the last 10 years is when I go to a record store. And I had this great chance when Justin got the call after he won Best New Artist at the Grammys from the Blind Boys of Alabama. And he was like, because he and I grew up listening to Blind Boys. And he was like, dude, Blind Boys just asked me to produce their new record, and I need you to be there. And I was like, okay. So he and I got together, and we picked the songs, we arranged it. We get into the studio when it's time. It's like a blizzard out. It's there's 4 feet of snow on the ground. The Blind Boys arrive. It's all these legends. I mean, they started touring back. They had to tour in the Chitlin circuit. They were touring in churches in a segregated South. And I'm in their presence. And the only thing I can think the only thing that's happening in me is I don't deserve to be here. This is these men are they are real legends. I have, by all accounts. And I'm just a fanboy from this small town in Wisconsin. And I was really quite terrified. I was excited. I was everything. But my imposter syndrome was going through the roof, and it was affecting my playing to a degree. And there was a moment where I went out to redo a little piano part on Take Your Burden to the Lord and Leave It There. I go out and I do this piano thing, and I think most of the guys were gone, but there was one of the singers, Ricky McKinney, was on the couch, and apparently he pulled the engineer. He just said, "Hey, who's that playing piano?" And there's a guy named Phil. He's out there on the floor right now, and he's just like, "Bring him over to me when he comes in." And and he came over to me and said, "Hey, Ricky wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh shh." shit. You know what I mean? I was like, I thought he was going to just be like, hey man, play it like this, don't play like that. He just is like, hey, how did you learn to play the old way? Like you play the old way, like the way like my mom and my grandma played, like in church in Atlanta. And I was just like, by listening to you, sir, like, I was like, but it was a moment where he was just like, you really love this music. I can tell. And I said, yes, sir. Absolutely. And he just said, you have to, he just said, then you go. Like, I hear you. Like, whatever you hear, I trust you. Go with it. And it was, I was 26 or 27, and that changed my life, because at that point in my life, it was like, not only did he accept me as a peer that I deserved to be there, but he really encouraged me to say, like, this music is in you. And so for me, when I got a chance, then what cracked open in me, this big thing cracked open in me, where I realized I had been saying no to all these things I was hearing. And I wasn't surrendering to who I really am and what I really love and respect. And because love and respect were at the core of what I was doing on that session, and it was named for me, and it was like, oh, it is in me. I began this process of saying, just say yes, Phil. Just surrender to who you are and lead with your love, lead with respect. And 2 years later, I had written Southland Mission and came out with Southland Mission. That was the first statement I made. After that, from that moment, Ricky told me that, and what happened after that, after 2 years, I wrote all that. I formed a band. I made a record with my first, real vision of things. And then that changed my life. And then I've continued to work in the gospel community for the last 15 years. I produced records and started a gospel label, and that music's so healing for me. And I made a film about a gospel singer, and I'm just, that community was like, it's sort of like the thing I was longing for as an 8th grader in that church choir. I moved to North Carolina, the hotbed of gospel music in America. And after 10 years, started to meet people in it. And then I began to build relationships based on my love and my respect, and showed up with that every time. And that's been really healing, because that sound, that harmony has just been in me forever. It's just, I'm drawn to it. And so anyway, thanks for that. It's a long story.
No, but I mean, I think it's, the one thing I didn't hear you say throughout this entire thing, and I don't know if it's purposeful or not, but like, what does that do to your faith?
Well, that's the thing. I feel like the music brought me back into a space where I was in proximity then with these tradition bearers. And I would be in these like prayer circles holding hands. And then I would start it out by just being like, I'm just so grateful to be here. And I want to give them that space. So I'm going to be present when I'm here, and bow my head. But over time, what began to happen is my relationship with the artists and the singers grew. I began to feel it more in my heart. Like I want this to come from an authentic place. So I found a way back into spirit. I found a way back into faith that I understand, and that I can authentically step into a room with and feel a part of things, and not feel like such an outsider. Well, at the same time, not like jumping into a doctrine and being like, this is exactly what's happening, right? It's just like, I just have found a way back into just nature, God, music, like the mystery, and people, and how we're all a reflection of this, like, this beautiful long symphony,
Yeah, I think that's, so often, and especially with music, and as a person who I grew up in the church, I was for a while, very against the capital C church, and very against any form of a higher power, God, whatever. And I remember talking to my dad and being like, this is all bullshit. And I was like, everything that you're doing, like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was angry at the fact that, here I am now in New York with all these, like, honestly, like, rich kid musicians who all had all sorts of cool gear and cool stuff and whatever. And, my dad, because of the nature of his career, we didn't have a ton of cash. It was not, I never knew hunger. I want to be very clear, but we didn't have much stuff.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But for a while I was really like resentful of like, man, I was like, my dad's dedicated his whole life to like God and all these things. And he got screwed, and God screwed him over, and he's got Parkinson's now, and he can't play piano, and he can't do any of these things. And all he ever wanted was to do this stuff. And I was like, he totally got screwed. And I was like, Dad, what is the point in any of these things? Because you got fucked over.
Yeah.
you got screwed.
Mm.
And he was like, the point is to just love your neighbor. And it fucking hit me, man. It hit me. So, and I was just, he's like, Jeremy, he's like, why do you think this is about me? And he's like, why do you even think this is about you? And he was like, I must have failed you so much. He's like, because none of this stuff is about you. He's like, you don't play music for you. He's like, you don't do this stuff for you. He's like, you missed it. And that's the stuff that I hear when I listen to your music and why I play it. You know, I'm almost getting emotional. Like, wow, I'll play it over and over again. I was like, there's something else on this thing, man. There's something else in there. And hearing more of this makes a ton of sense because I think it's, and I'm not asking you to evangelize or whatever. And I don't care what, you know, listeners will hear when they hear this, but like, it's very difficult to perform or experience some of the art, all of the art that you are projecting out in the world and not have some wonder about a higher power or something, because it doesn't. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about gospel. It's like, why do you listen to it when you're happy and when you're sad? Why is it like so intoxicating? And it's like, because there's something else it's connected to and striving to make a connection with that, like, you know. And so I'm very, very grateful for all of your candor through this, because I mean that's the stuff that really moves me at the end of the day, you know. And it also helps me really let go of the anger and pain I've had as, you know, just a young adult or now, you know, almost 40-year-old man. So it's just I'm there with you, Jeremy, 100%, man. I mean, your music is a language, right? You know, we have this chance to speak this thing with, you know, and you never know who you're going to meet on that path that you can actually communicate with. But it like in really a wild time to be alive right now in the world, and being the age we are. Like, we remember a different time. Our parents absolutely remember a different time, you know. And I remember riding bikes and being 5 miles away from home and getting home when it was dark. And my kids do not have that freedom. I'm going to tell you that. It's just, we're in a different space of just like, our bubbles are more concrete. It's like a concrete bubble. And some days, you know, I remember what it was like to be when you had to go to the airport and then had to adjust to that hypervigilance and awareness and of your space. And that has permeated like everything outside the airport now. It feels kind of like airport everywhere. There are times that it feels like that, where people all have this like the same bubble inside the airport. Is just kind of wherever you go. But I grew up watching my dad talk to strangers every day. He would just talk to people, you know, and he was just making little small talks and connections and just being like, hey, we're all here together. We're on top of this ski slope. We're in the grocery store line. We're wherever we are. And so there's a part of this modern experience that feels really misaligned. It feels like there's something missing there, you know? And so I've just I'm defiantly talking to strangers and telling people part of this beautiful collective expression and create experiment in the grand design of creation and why we make music and all these other things. Music has shown me that bridge that we can talk with each other. And I know it for a fact. I've seen it every day. You never know if it's your kids, if it's somebody you just get on a session with, if it's people you're in a room with. We're all there, and we accept these like lowered barriers and wider access to each other for a brief moment in time, for an evening, right? Or for a day. And I think that music can show us that way forward, where it's just like, I can speak with music in my heart that to somebody and a stranger with my English language, and just kind of rub against those bubbles a little bit, just to be like, hello in there, you know, how's it going? You know, that's part of my nature, and that honors who I am, to be able to just like, just connect with somebody who is just my neighbor, like, you know, in the biblical or any other sense you want to think about it. And so, I always like try and make mention of it when it comes up and it's right. But it's like, you know, don't talk to strangers is like 0 to 18. That's very, very applicable. And then throw that shit out the door once you're 18. You're an adult, figure it out. And then it should reverse. It should be like, no, I mean, be yourself, but like lead with that and talk to strangers, you know? Yeah. I mean, I think that's beautiful. Do you feel like you wouldn't have had this sort of like gratitude or joy if you wouldn't have gone through all this tough stuff in between?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely 100%. You know, I mean, the joy and gratitude that I did know before wasn't anchored in the authenticity of letting all of the things that were truly happening at the same time in my body. And your sadness, your depression, your anxiety, But like the lower points, the troughs of your life are actually what really connect you to other people and what really make you human in a way. And that's the hard thing. You feel so isolated in those moments, but you find out when you actually honor and acknowledge those parts of you and sit with that uncomfortability, it gives you an anchor to calmer waters underneath, like the part of life that just is, aggregate and moving along and is going to have some weight to it as you live. But like, it's the kind of thing that grandparents talk to their grandkids. They have that palpable gratitude for the beginning of life that they are so on the other side of now. And parents and kids have the unfortunate experience of being roommates for like 18 years. And I happen to think that 50% of all parent kid dynamics that are hard come down to roommate beef. It's roommate beef, right? So it's like when you're a grandparent, you get to just send them home, or like you get it one more chance when you're a grandparent to get it right again. If you didn't get it right when you were a parent, and you know that when you get a grandkid, then I think you know what you really want to do for this final chapter. And that's why I feel like people at that, our elders really embrace gratitude, I feel like, in a natural, organic way that they should, and that's the port of life that we're trajecting towards that. But why not adopt some of that now and just see where that's at, see where I'm going to become, but not wait for that to happen for me to like take lessons and glean from that, that kind of all loving, unconditional, safe space and encouragement from a place of just like, you're good here. I see all your flaws. I see all the things about you that are hard for your parents, but like, you're going to be okay. I see the parts of you that have like life in them, and I see the parts of you that you're struggling with, and I accept all of them. And that's like, I think like that's why I think like grandmother energy is like the most powerful like human state you can kind of arrive at. Even if it was a grandfather you had, they had some powerful women in their life that were channeling grandmother energy. That's what's being channeled, whatever it is, whoever it is. So I luckily, because my dad was a hospice nurse, I was around a geriatric population. I wasn't scared of that because he brought me around that, dying elders a lot. I was around that population a lot. So, and I saw the way my dad saw them as people and met them where they were at. And he would always make them laugh and bring this life out of them in this way that was, even me being shy and sensitive, I always noticed how much he just made people feel comfortable with him wherever he went. If 96 years old and, with a palsied face and like in hunched over in a chair, he would still manage to bring something out of them. And when he did, like these really cool moments would happen, So that kind of a lesson, you see it, but then you get to my age and you're like, that was really deep, Dad. Like that was like, that's a lesson that like doesn't hit till later. And then you have kids and then you start to think about like, what experience am I giving them? And am I showing them that same unapologetic like acceptance of people? And I like to think I am, but it's like, it turns out that was a really big lesson for me,
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot now, especially as a parent, into which there are certain times I have to kind of fake it is not what I would want to say, but it feels like I have to put on a different facade or something, or maybe suppress some other type of anxiety that's going on, so I can focus with my daughter or my son, Because it's like, man, well, in my head, I'm actually worried about this bill or this, whatever it is, this other thing, or this weird thing that's happening out there, or some tiff, that I got into with a family, whatever it is. And I'm trying to push that away and just focus on them and be there. And then I stop and I'm like, oh my God, I wonder how many times my dad had to do that.
He did.
And I was like, oh, shoot. And I was like, no, now I'm a jerk because I was pissed at
But always a lesson coming back at you, because you have that gift of like, now I'm a parent. Now I see my parents in a different way once you become a parent. And you have an extra level of like consideration that like you bounce back on your upbringing, and you're like, and you humanize your parents when you become a parent. They're like, oh, wow. Like you just have another tool in your belt to like navigate perspective with. And, with kids, like the beautiful gift of parenthood to me is not getting it right. And not getting it right, and like connects me to my parents who they didn't get it right all the time. I mean,
Sure.
I love them, and they were like magnificent people. They are. But we have chances, to like start over again. And it is a new day, and you have your kids and you really have another chance to just like remember what happened yesterday and like try and approach again. And the more honest I am with my kids, like now about like how I'm doing, where I'm at, why I got angry, what really happened. All of these things where I can just be accountable for everything. Because it's hard to see people I grew up with that have really difficult relationships with their fathers, mostly because their dads didn't have an emotional intelligence to actually like be accountable, say they were sorry, own up to things. They would just push things down, and channel it into some other unhealthy thing or whatever else happened, but we have all these like great resources at our disposal now these days where we can, we know too much now. Like like therapy is like a ubiquitous thing that like everyone I know has experience in therapy. And
that's great.
People have language.
I wish I could say the same over here, but
well, I would say a large part. I mean, as opposed to not knowing anybody that was in therapy really in my 20s, maybe a handful of people. Like I know a lot of people in there that are fixing things and figuring things out and figuring out how they tick and how they can kind of end toxic cycles within themselves generationally. And it starts with accountability, just being like, this is what happened. This is what I chose. And this is where I am today. And I got to start over, and I got to start over again today, and just like a big sigh, look in the mirror, just be like, hey, buddy, I see you in there. I know you're trying real hard. I know things didn't go well with your kids today. Literally talking to myself and being like, I see all the things you're trying to do. I know it's hard for you try to fail. I know it's hard for you to navigate anger. I know it's hard for you to try and keep up with all of your disciplines and your daily practices to give yourself what you need. But I see you trying, and I see you have come a long way from where you were, and I see you leading with love. I see you trying these things, like really getting into that zone and letting that happen and being okay with it, and to have a meeting myself where I'm at and talk to myself like I actually am like my best friend who I talk to my best friends all the time, and they're navigating shit. And I'm like, I see you doing this, and I know how hard this is for you, and your parents are, you're losing parents, and I can't imagine what this is like, but I see you also taking care of yourself in these ways. I see this. I do it all the time, but I couldn't give it to myself, and I have to give it to myself. So learning to like not say I'm having a hard time. It's like, no, look at myself in the mirror, or talk to myself on my voice memo like I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and be like, hey, buddy, I see you out there. Listen, I know it's been rough lately. I know you're a little low right now, but you've been low before, and look at all the ways that you've made it through. I've come this far. There's so many gospel songs that like hit those notes for me. Like, I've come too far to turn back now. These songs of like endurance, strength, resilience, and transcendence, liberation, all these things where it's like they're in there and they're helping,
Yeah, it's funny. A friend of mine, I was out to breakfast with him, and he was like, and he shared all this personal stuff that was going on with him. And he's like, I started in the morning. He's like, when I would have a bad day, he's like, I talked to myself in the mirror. And he told me, and I was like, oh, come on. I was like, that's just ridiculous. And then I was like, really? I was like, you think that actually does anything? He's like, I challenge you to try it once, just once. He's like, the next time something happens, he's like, whether you text yourself or speak to yourself, whatever. He's like, I would encourage you. He's like, but the only thing I'll ask is if you do it, tell me. And I was like, yeah, all right. And then one day I had just the shittiest day. And I was like, I'm doing good at this and this, I'm okay. And I was texting a friend, and I was like, oh, and he said something nice to me, and I immediately just annihilated his compliment. And he was like, God, you are so hard on yourself. He's like, I just complimented your like fit. I asked you what jacket you had on, whatever. Like, he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, okay. And I I was getting out of the shower, and I was like, all right, you can do this. And I was like, damn it, I got to text my friend now. Yeah. And I was like, I did it. It did feel good.
Yeah.
It was like, it worked.
It worked, man.
And he was like, yeah, duh.
Yeah, duh. And to give yourself that is a surrender, and it is really hard for people to give themselves that, but we have to. It's just these are the times, and these are the conditions in which we all have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet in a way that really helps us be fully present and aware for the people in our life as best we can every day. And if we don't give that to ourselves, if we don't understand what it is to give ourselves that sanctuary and honor our sanctums, the parts of us that are sacred and the things we find in this world that are sacred, we get to choose that value. Like, I choose the value of what I value.
Yeah.
I collect rocks, man. I collect rocks. I don't know what any of them are called except for the agates. I have rocks with stripes, rocks that are blue, rocks that are like, just beautiful to me. And my whole living room is just filled with displays of rocks. I love carving wood. I love and just
a little bit of whittling, or you're making something.
Nope, but just whittling my own thing that I came up with in my mind that I discovered organically. Like, I didn't preconceive these things. I just found myself doing them. But, we, each of us have these things in our life. It's a basketball game, like the sanctuary of being in that space where you just, here I am, the sanctuary of a song that you just love for your whole life, that always just gives you that release and brings you to point, whatever it is. It's like we need to honor ourselves by living up to our sacred nature of like this gift that we have of being alive. It is so hard. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I'm always in practice with it. Still living month to month. I'm still trying to figure things out every month for my life that are really hard. But if I don't give myself these things, the the slope it keeps going down. And then I stop seeing things like you being on stage at Bowery and being angry. I've been there so many times and just been like, I look back and see, I missed that moment because I was so caught up in my own prison that I wasn't giving myself anything sacred. It was a prison then, not a sanctuary, right. And just to find that balance of like, I want my kids to see me in all my quirky shit, I want them to see what an individual.
Dad's got his rocks and
Dad's got his rocks and portraits of gospel artists and, whatever, the piano and sitting in the living room, and I'll just sit down and I take the front off of it so that my younger kid will play if I don't have the front on the piano because he likes to see the hammers go. So I'm like, go ahead, man,
Do you teach your kids?
I have just started, but I had to wait until they, everything's there for them. And my oldest kid has a guitar and an amp in his room. I kind of go sneak in there and keep it tuned. My
dad, my dad used to shout through the wall. He'd say, "You're flat.
You're flat."
I'd be like, I was like, Dad.
I mean, so I'm waiting. Like my youngest kid just learned
okay. Greatest living composer of all time, man.
For real. So that he's into it. And then I taught, and then he was sitting down and he was like, "Man, Dad, how do you do that?" And once he's like, once my kids come to me with a question, "Dad, how do I do this?" I'll meet you there right there. But there's a part of me that, because I know this life really well, and I had all that like encouragement as a kid, I was like, "Do this." And then I took all these lessons for 20 years, and I was so in the pedagogy that, the intuition was the biggest thing. I want kids to have a natural aptitude towards it. So it's kind of happening now. It's like my 14-year-old's just picking up the guitar and listening to AC/DC every day. And he's just like
good stuff.
Really into that. I know, right? I was a Bruce Hornsby kid. I didn't listen to anything heavy when I was a kid because I was like, oh my God, that's intense. You know what I mean? I'm a sensitive kid. And, but like, they were learning, like Amos was learning, Mario Brothers. Learning anything that's like coming in. That's how I started. The first thing I learned on the piano was Star Wars. Or Popeye the Sailor Man or whatever it was. Like, back in the day, I would pick it out. And so, I mean, whatever they come up with, and if they come to me and they're like, "Dad, how do I do this?" Like, "Dad, this is so good. How do I do this?" And I'm like, "I've got you." 100%. If you come to me with that intention, I'll meet you all the way there. But I don't want to go all the way across the bridge and try and pull you and retrieve you out to where you're going to like enjoy it, because I can't control that. I'm looking for those moments that I see something take hold and then a curiosity comes in there, because both my kids have ADHD, so do I. So they're only really going to jump into something that they tunnel into, that they have an interest in. Otherwise, most of everything else is just kind of like,
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I think especially the fact that you're taught, which you didn't mention, but all the times that you don't go in there when you hear him struggle, because that's the thing. I'm with that now, where I see my daughter, whether it's a Lego thing or drawing or, I really want my kids to play music.
Yeah.
And it's, 7 and 2, like I gotta go easy on it, but and now my son, he likes me to basically play music while he plays. So like he'll sit and he's playing with cars and trucks. And he's like, Dad, guitar. And I'm like, okay. And I'll get out my guitar. Yeah. And he's like, and I'll play something and he'll be like, is this the Beatles? Because I basically just warm up with like Blackbird and stuff all the time,
Perfect. It's so beautiful. The melody and the harmony are so beautiful in that song.
It is. It's a great, any of those, and any sort of like Paul Simon, like walk downs, like American Tune, where, just his chord voicings and how he transitions. He doesn't just go from like C to G. Everything is like a hammer on or some sort of like walk down or the beat at C. Yeah, but in my head, I was like, Russ, do you want to play? And he's like, no. And in my house, like, why doesn't he want to play? And I was telling my wife, she's like, well, she's like, he's 2. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Okay. No, it's good. But I understand, Jeremy, I really understand the impulse to like want your kids to, because I secretly, I'm just like pining for my kids to like, I would love to like make things with them, and I would love to do that, like, and find that, but part of, your journey, as you share with me, is like your own cycle with like how you fell in love with music, what happened in the beginning stages, like pursuing it, and then having to make other plans, right? And there's room for you, and that I know for you to like not only share your journey with your kids, but like for you to heal yourself with music, with that, and go back to your intuition of why you find it within yourself, and let your kids find that, like continue your journey with it for you in one level, and heal that part of yourself through the language in there, and let your kids see you doing it. And like when the kids see that, like you tap into your thing, whether it's playing the Beatles, learning new things, growing as a musician still, because why not? And and just going after stuff that you hear and want, and trying to, whatever it is that you feel like is where the unresolved parts are, to like really be in that. I think like this is like a cycle too, that like I know this really well from being a piano player, but I think there's a wide scale cultural toxic cycle within piano pedagogy with Western classical music, which is like the rigor and the unreachable expectation for kids these days of a recital, and the absolute painstaking anxiety and dread and terror that comes with that experience, and how many kids are turned off because they're not quite ready. It's good to like practice these things right. These are like, but like not every kid. But I think that when kids walk away from it, then I feel like as they get older, they have this experience where they're like, why did I quit? What? It was a recital? Why did I quit? And then instead of resolving it within themselves, they sign their kids up for lessons. And then and they need their kids. Think about it. They need their kids to fulfill the thing that they didn't follow through with. And you're heaping that expectation on them to live your life in that part of you that is not healed. So what I tell parents all the time, or I tell people at my shows, I have people raise their hand. Raise your hand if you took lessons. Raise your hand if you quit early. Raise your hand if you regretted quitting as an adult. Raise your hand if you have kids that you're putting in lessons now because you feel bad that you quit lessons. What I feel like what it needs to be healed in there, all of us need to heal ourselves in that way. Music is a gift of a healing source. It's not going to therapy. It's like, it's a great space for healing. But like, go back to the piano, learn one song, something you've always wanted to learn.
Oh yeah, just sit and play Randy Newman.
100%, dude. Absolutely.
Oh God.
In America, every man is free. All right. Okay. Okay. I love Randy Newman.
No, it's great. Yeah, because I was listening to a bunch of old Randy Newman, and a friend of mine who was playing music, and he was like, "Oh man, like there's this and this," and then I was like, "But have you heard Harps and Angels?" Which was like a more later release. And I was like, "There's a song called Losing You."
Yeah.
And it's so heavy.
It's so
it's
heavy.
Beautiful. And so I was like, because I basically play like Paul McCartney style piano where it's like just root and chords.
Oh, yeah.
Like I don't have. Yeah. I know it's like, okay, I can play the bass with my left hand. I'll do the chords with my right, but totally. I don't really know music. So I'll just look at, chord charts. I'm like, okay, flat the third, make a minor here. I can figure this out. But it's, I just will sit when I go to my brother's place because he has an actual upright piano, and all I do is I just kind of like check out of whatever they're talking about, and I just go and sit and play their songs. Yeah. And like sitting and playing old Randy Newman, it's the best feeling. Like So I don't know.
That's
I digress.
A space.
But,
no, I mean that Randy Newman's an incredible touch point because he's been a long time hero of mine, and he's kept me in touch with my intuition because I would practice my stuff for classical repertoire in college, and then I would just take a break and a breather from Chopin and Rachmaninoff to play Simon Smith in The Amazing Dancing Bear. Or I would play in Germany before the war, whatever. I would go back to just figuring things out by ear and just learning all of his stuff. And that I've been blessed to have that constant companion in my life. It's there with me like through thick and thin. It's a friend when I need a friend, and I've needed it many times. At all times in my life. Yeah. So I just encourage you to just continue to do that and trust in the process, like that little trust fall and trust leap to use music to find those parts and get back into the things that you've lost touch with and things that you want to do, and then do it with your kids aware of it. So they see their dad, who is their whole world, tackling something new. They see their dad, who is their whole world, getting a little frustrated and trying something and trying to get it done and then getting good at it. And they see that process and they see the fulfillment that it gives you. Then they have a story about what music can do for the person that's their whole world, And then I think that opens a door later. It plants a seed that we don't have control over, but it's a good seed,
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, Phil, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to be conscious of your time, but before we wrap, I did want to ask you, you've mentioned in other interviews and stuff that you chat with Bruce Hornsby. Are you guys still bros?
Yeah, I love Bruce. He's great. He's just he's hilarious. We almost never talk about music. We've been on stage together, and he's a really important figure in my life because of when I met him, why I dove so hard into music because of him, doing a whole life and a whole career, meeting him along the path again on stage as a collaborator, recording with him, telling him the story, which he just...
Did he remember?
No, he didn't remember. He was in the middle of he was just touring with the Dead, touring with all this stuff. He was gone on the road. So I was, he doesn't remember, but he does remember the show that I met him at. But there was 200 people in line behind me to get things signed.
Yeah.
I was the first one there. You bet your ass. And I still have the thing he signed for me up in my studio, practice, Bruce R. Hornsby. And then now, now we talk to each other, he talks in all these quirky voices like me and accents. And he's got a disgusting, disturbing, but incredible sense of humor. And, which I vibe with him. We kind of rib each other, which is a great sign of where we're at, it's been a little while since I talked to him, but I've been thinking about him a lot lately. So I think I'll reach out to him and invite him to my Richmond show that I'm playing.
I was going to say, you got to send him the record. I'm sure you already have.
I will. You know what I love about this whole thing, to be honest, Jeremy, that I love? I actually love the fact that I genuinely enjoy him as a person, and I enjoy our rapport together and our relationship we built. And what's funny is that like I can tell where I'm at now because I actually don't give a shit or not whether Bruce Hornsby likes my music or if he trashes it or like ribs me and makes fun of it. Like I actually love it.
But is it because you know he won't?
It would have destroyed me. Oh, he would not.
He's not going to do that.
Dude, he would not hesitate to just I trust me. He's very honest. So he would not hesitate to rip me a new asshole and just be like, dude, what are you doing? You know what I mean? I love now about where we're at, where I'm at, and where things are just like, I know that we both play this instrument, but we both have completely different like visions and paths of what we're trying to do. I mean, what he did 30 years ago is so far in the past for him. He has to pay homage to it when he plays shows, but his eye's been on the future forever. And he's trying to chase things that he'll never quite grasp, but he's still running in his 70s on this path. And he's still shedding. He's still practicing every day. And I'm trying to reach people on this like more spiritual, meditative level. We're doing different things. So I love it that it's like apples and oranges, but I love him. I love him as a person. He's a great guy. He's hilarious. He's just, he's one of a kind, and I'm blessed to know him,
Shout out Bruce Hornsby. Amazing. Well, Phil, thank you so much for this. This was a good one, man. Yeah, this is a great one.
Thank you, dude. Jeremy, great questions, good vibes, good sidetracks. Dude, we covered it.
Thanks so much, man. It was great chatting.
Thank you, Jeremy, so much.
We'll see ya. You've been listening to Blammo. Our show is produced by Blammo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super, ultra important, if I had a air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon, because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene DeLeon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blammo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed and more to come. So we will see you all soon.